The movie opens as we see a man named Dwight Evans taking a relaxing bath in a tub, but the piece is broken when he hears the sound of a car pulling up and voices outside. Dwight bolts from the bathroom window, revealing that he's actually a homeless drifter trespassing in someone else's home. He then makes his way to an old junk car by the beach, which he has been using as a makeshift shelter. At night, Dwight is seen rummaging through a trash can, where he discovers some discarded food, and devours it. He then returns to his car, where he reads a book before drifting into sleep. In the morning, he's jolted awake by a female police officer, who invites him to accompany her to the station. A worried Dwight asks if it's about the house, but the officer promises to explain everything later. Upon arriving at the station, the officer apologizes for keeping him in the dark, and reassures him that he isn't in any trouble. She then delivers unsettling news about a criminal who is about to be released. The words hit Dwight like a punch in the gut, and the officer explains that she just wants him to be safe, and suggests he stay at the station for a while. The next morning, a determined Dwight buys a map of Virginia, then fuels up his car, and sets out on the road. We then catch a glimpse of the newspaper the officer had given him, which reveals that a murderer who committed a double homicide in 1993 is about to be released. Dwight's next stop is an ammunition store, where he plans to purchase a gun, but soon realizes he doesn't have enough money. He briefly considers stealing one, but a security camera catches his attention. That night, Dwight arrives in front of a nightclub where he notices several parked cars, but not a single person in sight. He thus takes advantage of the situation and smashes a window, after which he steals a gun and quickly drives away from there. The next day, Dwight uses a crowbar to remove the gun's lock, but in the process, he ends up breaking the weapon, which only makes him more frustrated. Regardless, Dwight continues his journey, and soon arrives at the Virginia State Penitentiary, where he looks very anxious. Shortly after, a limo arrives, and a family steps out to greet Wade Cleland, who has just been released. The sight ignites a storm of rage and sorrow within Dwight, and he begins to follow the family. Not long after, the limo stops in front of a bar, and the family heads inside to celebrate Wade's release. Dwight watches carefully, and once he's sure no one is around, he slips inside through the back door. He moves to the men's bathroom, while clutching a small knife and filled with anxiety. Moments later, two men enter the bathroom, so Dwight hides in a stall, and quickly realizes they are Wade and his brother. And then, as soon as the brother leaves, a furious Wade begins choking him, but Dwight stabs him in the head, ending his life in an instant. Next, a satisfied Dwight hurriedly leaves the bar while covered in blood, and then tries to slash the limo's tire with his knife, but he ends up injuring his hands and rushes to his car in pain. He tries to drive away, but panics when he realizes he has dropped his keys inside the bathroom. Meanwhile, inside the bar, Wade's family discovers his lifeless body. At the same time, Dwight gets inside the limo, and immediately drives away from there, just as the Cleland family exits the bar to catch him. After driving for a while, Dwight realizes someone is in the back, which makes him worried. He stops the car, and is surprised to see the youngest Cleland brother, William. William asks if he hurt Wade, and Dwight confirms it. Turns out he was seeking revenge on Wade for murdering his parents 20 years ago. But William claims that Wade didn't actually kill them, and runs away, while a confused Dwight tries to process what he has just heard. Following this, he abandons the limo by the side of the road and walks through a dark forest. Dwight eventually arrives at an empty house, and sneaks inside to clean himself up. He shaves off his long hair and beard, and puts on some clean clothes he found inside, completely changing his appearance. That night, Dwight switches multiple news channels for any reports on Wade's death, but gets confused when he can't find anything. The next morning, the man arrives to meet his sister, Sam, who is a single mother with 2 kids. She is pleasantly surprised to see him, and the two head to a cafe for a conversation. Sam reveals that she knew he was somewhere in Delaware, and she used to visit there every year. Dwight then mentions that he saw her once, but didn't dare to approach because he looked like a mess, which causes Sam's eyes to well up with tears. Here, Dwight finally confesses to his sister that he killed Wade, and expected to see it on the news, yet there has been no mention of it anywhere. He explains how he was terrified Wade would kill him, so he had no choice but to strike first. Sam is stunned by the revelation, but also relieved and hopes that the man suffered immensely before his death. To add, she mentions that the Clelands still live at their old address, and it enrages her whenever she sees their limo driving through the neighborhood. Upon hearing this, a scared Dwight asks where her kids are, so Sam reveals they're in the house with the sitter. The two worry that the Clelands might attack them since they didn't contact the police, and hurry to the house. But fortunately, the kids are fine, and Sam slaps her brother for putting them in this dangerous position. Dwight promises to turn himself in, but he needs to make sure first that Sam and the kids are safe. He pleads with her to go to Pittsburgh, since his car is registered to this address, which isn't safe for them. At first, Sam refuses his request, since it's her home, but gripped by fear for her kids' safety, she finally agrees, and leaves for Pittsburgh. Dwight is now left alone at his sister's home, so he arms himself with a pitchfork in case the Clelands attack him. He waits tensely all night, and when they don't arrive, he finally moves to the kitchen to make tea, after which he goes through a box of his old memories. And then suddenly, Dwight hears car noises outside, and when he looks out, he's surprised to see his dusty car parked there. He realizes the Clelands have come for him, so he rushes to the bedroom, and makes it appear that someone is sleeping. Then, he switches on the lights, and turns on the faucet, flooding the place with noise to confuse the attackers. Shortly after, two Cleland brothers smash a window, and sneak inside the house, while Dwight hides behind the hall sofa. The brothers hear the faucet running, so they carefully make their way upstairs, while Dwight takes advantage of this moment to hurry outside. But unfortunately, Dwight gets into his car and tries to drive away, but he accidentally runs over one of the brothers, Teddy. He frantically asks whether they came for him or his sister, but the man is unconscious. Dwight then tries to drag the body, but the second brother, Carl, arrives and tries to shoot him. And so, Dwight points Teddy's gun at Carl, forcing him to retreat and flee. He then places the unconscious body in the car when Carl returns and shoots him in the leg with an arrow. Despite the pain, Dwight still manages to drive away while screaming in agony. The next morning, Dwight stops at an isolated place, where he scans Teddy's body and takes all the money and belongings, before putting him in the trunk. He then uses a saw to painfully cut off the arrow stuck in his leg. After that, Dwight visits a pharmacy to purchase medical supplies, which he then uses to attempt to remove the remaining arrow. But the pain becomes too much for him to handle, so he rushes to a nearby hospital, where he asks for help before collapsing unconscious. When Dwight wakes up, he finds himself in a hospital bed, and is surprised to see that the wound on his leg has been sewn up. He immediately sneaks out of the hospital without anyone noticing. Dwight then returns to his car, where Teddy has regained consciousness, and desperately asks to be released. But Dwight completely ignores him, and grabs some clothes from a donation center to change out of his hospital attire. He then heads to his sister's house, where he cleans up the place, and fixes the window that was shattered in last night's chaos. Later, he returns to his car, where he flips through his school yearbook. Meanwhile, Teddy continues begging to be let out, but Dwight says he won't do it unless he gets a gun. He continues to flip through the yearbook and comes across a photo of an old friend named Ben, who used to be in the military. In the next scene, Dwight arrives at Ben's old address and meets his mother. The old woman reveals that Ben moved out a long time ago, but she recognizes Dwight and warmly welcomes him in. She then writes down the address of Ben's workplace and current home. Dwight thanks her sincerely, and they share a cup of tea, before he hits the road once again. Next, Dwight goes to the nightclub where Ben works, and approaches him privately after his shift ends. Ben is shocked to see his old friend after so long, and recalls the missing posters he once made for him. But Dwight isn't in the mood to discuss the past events, and urgently explains that he's here because he needs a big favor. Shortly after, the duo arrives at Ben's home, where we learn that Dwight had asked him for a gun. When asked what it's for, Dwight hesitates, so Ben understands that the less he knows, the better. He then hands his friend a rifle, but admits he can't just send him off like that, not knowing what he's getting into. Ben offers to train him on how to shoot, and though Dwight hesitates at first, he finally agrees. In the next scene, Dwight returns to his car, where he finally opens the trunk door, and asks again if they came for him or his sister, so Teddy responds that they only came for him. Dwight questions why they didn't call the cops, and Teddy says it was because they wanted to handle the matter privately. Dwight then gives him water and says he will surrender himself to the police, and they can call the whole thing off. But Teddy says Dwight can't just lock himself up after killing his brother, who didn't deserve that. A confused Dwight asks him if what William said about Wade not being the murderer is true. In a shocking twist, Teddy reveals that it was actually their father, Big Wade, who committed those murders. It was because their mom was having an affair with Dwight's dad, which was discovered by Big Wade. He also reveals that Big Wade didn't plan to kill Dwight's mom, and she was just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. It turns out the old man had cancer, and they couldn't let him die in prison, so little Wade ended up taking the blame. Upon hearing this, Dwight is left stunned that he unknowingly killed the wrong man in his desire for vengeance. He gives Teddy a phone to call his family, and arrange a meeting in public so this can end once and for all. Teddy then calls home, and informs his sister about his situation. He claims that she wants to talk to Dwight, and asks him to come closer for the phone. Dwight reluctantly complies, but it turns out to be a huge mistake, as Teddy suddenly hurls him to the ground and seizes his rifle. He then reveals that no one is home, and his entire family is out hunting. Realizing he's doomed, Dwight accepts his fate, but asks if they will go after his sister, who has nothing to do with any of this. Teddy doesn't answer, and he begins taunting Dwight by saying how his parents' killer spent his last days smoking and drinking, and died a free man. But then, when Teddy is about to finish Dwight's eyes widen in shock as he sees his friend Ben, who had been silently observing everything. Next, the two friends load the dead body into the car, where Dwight finally reveals his quest for vengeance, and how he murdered Wade. Thus, Ben gives him target practice, and hands him a smaller rifle that Dwight feels more comfortable carrying. As Dwight prepares to leave, he looks at his friend with gratitude, and apologizes for dragging him into this mess, but Ben states that Dwight did the right thing, or else he would have died by now. The two share a heartfelt goodbye hug, before Dwight finally drives away. Shortly after, Ben gets into his car, but it won't start, and he soon notices that Dwight has taken the car battery to ensure he doesn't follow him. In the next scene, Dwight arrives at the Cleland's house, which is located deep in a remote part of the woods. He carefully surveys the area, and realizing no one is around, he smashes the door open and slips inside. He thoroughly searches the house, and discovers several firearms hidden everywhere. He collects all of them, and dumps them in the nearby lake. Afterward, he drinks a lot of water, before stepping outside to urinate on the grave of Big Wade as an act of disrespect toward the man who destroyed his family. Following this, Dwight builds a makeshift barricade from several pieces of furniture and waits for the Clelands to return. But even after waiting for a long time, nobody comes home, causing him to fall asleep. The next morning, Dwight drags Teddy's lifeless body from the trunk, and buries him right in front of the house. After that, he comes up with a plan, and uses his phone to leave a voicemail at the Cleland residence. At night, a car finally pulls up to the house, so a prepared Dwight hides behind a wall with his rifle. Soon, Carl and his two sisters return, and the panicked and angry family then hears the voicemail Dwight left, where he reveals that Teddy is dead, and he knows the truth about his parents' murderer. He mentions that 2 members of each family have died, which makes things even, so they can either end this now, or let it escalate. He requests them to leave his sister out of it, but Carl shouts that they'll go to Pittsburgh to kill Sam, so Dwight immediately kills him. The sisters desperately beg him to stop, while Dwight becomes emotional and begins giving a speech on his moral dilemma. During this, William quietly sneaks in with a gun, and fires a gunshot straight into Dwight's abdomen. The woman screams at William to finish him, but the scared boy is hesitant to take someone's life. Following this, Dwight examines his wound, and informs William that he has completed his job, implying that he will soon bleed to death anyway. He then orders the boy to leave immediately and take his car hidden in the woods, while he intends to finish what he began here. The boy obeys and slowly walks away as Dwight drops a bombshell, revealing that William is actually his father's son, which makes them half-brothers. After the boy leaves, one of the women grabs a hidden machine gun and opens fire relentlessly. William hears the gunfight, but refuses to intervene in the brutal carnage between the two families. Inside the home, both women are dead, and the movie comes to an end as Dwight gladly accepts his death, knowing that the cycle of vengeance has